Are you ready to embrace a healthier, more vibrant life? Look no further than With Joy, a transformative movement and nutrition program that goes beyond the ordinary. We believe that true wellness encompasses mind, body, and spirit. We're here to elevate you to a place of health, wellness, and healing. Whether you're a seasoned athlete or just starting your fitness journey, we've got something for you. Our comprehensive programs include strength, mobility, endurance, and conditioning to elevate your fitness, recovery and recuperation for healing, and nutrition wellness plans to fuel your body for optimal performance. Check out our show notes for more information and links to our programs. Join the With Joy movement today and discover a whole new way to thrive. Hi, beautiful listeners. Laura here. Before we get started, I wanted to give you a content warning. Today's episode contains cursing and depictions of emotional, psychological, and physical manipulation and abuse. Roughly between minutes 42 to 47, there will be mention of a physical injury, which I know can be distressing. Listener discretion advised. And please take good care of yourselves. If you need mental health resources and support, please call 988 in the United States or connect with a mental health provider in your area. Thanks so much. Now, without further ado.
Hi, I'm Joy Han Silva.
And I'm Laura Han Segundo Collins.
And welcome to Hahnacity. Hey, Laura.
Hey, Joya.
How are you doing?
I'm a bit nervous. Okay,
Yeah.
though. How are you doing?
I'm good. But I understand being nervous.
Right before I sat down, I was counting all my gray hairs. And I was thinking about a few months ago, my younger son and I were in the bathroom, sort of looking at each other in the mirror. And he very excitedly said to me, "Mom, I didn't know you were growing a mustache." I was thinking about that as I was counting my gray hairs. So
what a great
story. Anything except for having to share my story right now.
That's awesome.
It's nerve-wracking.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Well, I think that both of us have been on this interesting journey with each other. And it's really the first time that we have listened to our full gymnastics story with each other. I think in the past, we've sort of edited ourselves. And so this is the first time where we're getting a complete picture of what we went through when we were little girls.
Totally.
So I'm sure all of this is incredibly difficult, overwhelming, bringing up things that we haven't really thought of since we were kids.
Yeah.
So I understand this being really nerve-wracking, but I'm hoping and I'm almost certain that this will also be incredibly healing.
Yeah.
And that you will feel a sense of love and support by sharing your story because you are not alone.
No.
We are in this together. And the truth is, you were never alone.
I couldn't go through this without you. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Same. Of course. This is what we are doing this for.
Yeah.
This is what community is all about. This is Hahnacity, you know?
That's right.
And I'm already tearing up. So
maybe let's start.
Yeah, let's start. I think what we should do first is give an overall view of how Eastern Bloc coaching methods, fun topic, influence the sport of particularly USA gymnastics. So if we tell our audience who are not familiar with gymnastics, how would we explain that to them and how that was a huge part of our upbringing and training?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So without any textbooks in front of us, just off the top of our heads.
Yeah.
So definitely go to historical documentation for any of this accuracy. But this is the knowledge that has been shared to us as well.
Yeah.
My understanding is that gymnastics from the 1980s and 1990s perspective, that has a lot to do with origins in the Cold War of all things.
Yeah.
So following the Korean War, there's a nuclear conflict between the then USSR and the United States, and it was very intense. At the same time, the Olympics are still happening, and the USSR is dominating practically everything.
Yeah.
Every sport, particularly with gymnastics.
Yeah. I think there's only one other person that I can think of from a different country during that time in the 60s, and that
Mhm.
gymnast was from Czechoslovakia. Other than
Mm,
that, Russia gymnasts are the only ones at this prior time that I can think of because they were dominant.
totally. And then an added layer to this is that there are people trying to defect, trying to get out
Mhm.
of the Eastern Bloc and USSR regions. They don't want to live there anymore. So at some point, the conflict becomes so overwhelming for the United States and the USSR that in the 1980s Olympics in Moscow, the US opts not to go. They boycott. Now, what does the Eastern Bloc have to do with coaching methods? It's often connected to a particular style and culture of total control coaching, meaning the coach is the expert, like a dictator. If the coach
Mhm.
says don't eat, you don't eat. If a coach calls you a useless imbecile for not pointing your toes enough, you're supposed to take that insult and get stronger from it somehow. If coach says condition for 5 hours straight, you condition. You don't ask questions, you just follow orders,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And families follow suit. You might see gymnasts either living away from their families, like you, their food
Mhm.
intake, rest, practices, everything determined by coaches, or families with talented athletes, often recruited in childhood, they might receive special treatment, maybe better housing or some kind of connections, etc. If their children train with said coaches or teams. And as Eastern Bloc and Russian athletes dominated Olympic gold medals, the rest of the world started to imitate this recipe for champions. And off the top of my head, I can totally remember meeting elite gymnasts from China and Australia, living and training in these sort of athlete communities as well.
Yeah.
So no one's looking out for these young athletes' health. And for many families, these children were tickets to all around better lives for whole families. So much isolation, so much power and control over young people, relinquished to coaches, to grown adults.
Mm.
So you can imagine just the setup alone can pave the way for quote unquote harsh or maybe downright abusive coaching.
Mm.
This is why we all refer to this style of coaching as quote fear based coaching.
Yeah.
It's total control over children and families all over the world. It became thought of as a recipe to produce champions. So, in the late 1970s and 80s, even if a coach, for whatever reason, doesn't want to live in the Eastern Bloc in Russia, they don't agree with or believe in communism, or they don't want to live under a certain regime, and they defect to the United States, they've still brought the only coaching methodology they know with them to the
Mm.
United States.
Yeah.
And that's total control, fear based coaching.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's go back a little bit and I'll fill in the
Mhm.
gymnastics aspect.
Okay.
In 1976, Nadia Comaneci wins her gold medal in Montreal. It's the first time that there is a competitor that beats Russia. And not only does she beat Russia, she is perfect. She gets the first perfect 10, multiple gold medals in Montreal, therefore, is named the greatest gymnast of all time. And she is coached by Bella Crowley. With that achievement, his career then skyrockets as the greatest coach. Prior to 1976, we only knew Russia to dominate. And here
Right.
comes the little girl, not an adult. She is 14 years old. So then it transforms this idea that little girls are the way to go to create champions.
Start them early.
Start them early.
Mm-hmm.
Cut to this influence of little girls competing in 1979 at a world championship. This is where USA finally wins a gold medal. There's a male gymnast on the floor exercise, and a women gymnast, Marcia Frederick, wins a gold medal on uneven bars. And so there's a lot of excitement, particularly with the fact that USA Gymnastics is now winning. There's an
Mm,
opportunity for them to do really well, and there's a lot of expectation on that 1980 Olympic team.
right.
So what we know is USA boycotts out of that Olympics when we had a lot of promise on that team.
That's so heartbreaking.
I couldn't imagine making it all the way to the end and then not going. 4 years later, 1984, we host the games in Los Angeles, and Russia decides to boycott our Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes to our Olympic champion, Mary Lou Retton. There's a lot of controversy with that win because Russia wasn't there. Had Russia competed, what would the outcome have been? We don't know if Mary Lou would have won. Who's to say? But some of the best gymnasts in the world did not compete in that Olympic Games because Russia had boycotted. But another thing It's Bella Karolyis, the very first gymnast who wins an Olympic game in America. So Bella defects from Romania to the United States shortly after that 80 Olympics. And his very first shot at the Olympics in America, he creates another Olympic champion in Mary Lou Retton, solidifying that he is the greatest coach of all time because he only creates winners. So that is the background of the influence with that particular time.
Yeah. Wow. And this is when I entered gymnastics. That's when that Karolyis name was the best of the best. Would we have gone to Texas on our own? I don't know. Basically, after Flares, I had gone to a gym called Scats in Huntington Beach. And this is probably 1986 or 87, where we would be weighed every day. This always comes to mind. And every day you had to mark your weight onto a little chart.
Wait. Was it visible to everyone, your weight?
Oh, yeah. This was in the locker room. You'd walk up to a little scale and there would be a chart behind it. You'd have your name with a little box and you'd have to weigh yourself and put how much you weighed that day.
Okay. So everybody's name and stats were printed.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Now, at the time, did I care? Probably not that much because I was probably 8 at that time. But it probably mattered even more so to the older girls. The superstars were still there, one of which was an icon to me. She's an Asian American gymnast, the fabulous Sabrina Marr. I didn't work out with her, but I knew she was there and she was winning at the time, which was amazing to watch because she was such an inspiration. But for me, I was part of a littler group that was supposed to aspire to being the next group of elites eventually. I think they were called like the pre-elite team. I didn't get chosen by the end of that year, but it doesn't matter. I really did enjoy the time, but I got bored. There's just so many basics you can do. And at some point you want to learn something new.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. I mean, competitions aside, you just want to learn something new. Right. And that happened to be the time that Joanne got me that winter camp at Karolyis. And this is a story that I was already shared with Joanne. By the end of that week, Bella took me aside. I did an evaluation. I was invited. In January of 1988, my family and I agreed that it's cool to let Laura move to Houston. And my sister, in a very noble, self-sacrificing way, at such a tender age, 19 or 20, she decided she wanted to be my guardian. And so she came with me. So I went away on holiday break. And by the time school started up, I was living in Texas.
Wow.
Yeah. Whole new place. I don't remember much of the beginning. I know we were living in a small apartment. I can't even imagine what it was like for Natalie. And I know we're going to talk with her in just a moment. So I'm very curious to know her experience of everything, because I know when I was that age, 19, 20, 21, I was an absolute ding dong. So
same.
Yeah.
Massive ding dong.
Yeah. So she's so young, and to be taking care of her little sister like a daughter, which actually she kind of always had done, because she's always been a major player in my upbringing, being especially 10 and a half years older than me. Our parents, they just worked a lot. You know, it's sort of typical immigrant parents, went to work early, came home late. I have many memories of my mom in her work clothes, cooking meals from scratch after work, because that's what you did in 1980 something, you know, versus now when you just open up a can of pasta sauce, and I still complain about that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what it was like for my mom or my dad either. But my parents, they did stay in Cali. They had good enough jobs. They were pretty middle class. And in the end, it was more economical for Natalie to take care of me. And they stayed behind to work versus the entire family move.
Wow. Yeah. So looking back on all those things, what was your goodbye like to your family? How was your goodbye to your parents?
This is so sad, but I don't remember. I don't even remember saying goodbye to you. Just even thinking about it now, it's too painful to even think about saying goodbye to you, period. So I can't imagine wanting to remember that as a kid either.
So it's really interesting because I have a memory in my childhood when we were at my house in Granada Hills swimming. We were playing, and I have this like picture of my dad and my mom talking to your mom. And my dad tells you to come over. And I'm sure this was the time that your mom was telling my parents that they were allowing you and Natalie to move to Texas. But I don't remember them telling me that you were leaving. I can faintly remember the picture of my dad sitting down and you were standing in front of me and I was literally right next to you. And he sort of gives you this best wishes sort of speech about do great, do what you love, enjoy your time, and like wish you the best type of thing. But as a little girl, I think what you were like maybe 9 when you left. So I was 6 and I had no idea what was going on. But I think in hindsight, my parents were really supportive with your decision in moving away because they really believed you had exceptional talent. But I had no idea you were leaving.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What was that like for you then afterwards?
The first like week, I do remember asking my parents because you guys would come over a lot on the weekends. Like
Yeah.
I remember spending a lot of weekends with you and your sister and your mom. And I remember the following weekend, I was like, where's Laura and Natalie and Auntie? And my parents were like, oh, they're not coming. They moved to Texas.
Mm.
And
Oh my
so,
God.
I mean, you were my best friend. I don't think I really understood what that meant. But yeah, I think it was hard. There's definitely this, I'm going to get emotional already.
Yeah.
But yeah, that separation, if you think about it,
Yeah.
was a long time. And it's a really informative time in your young life. And when you lose your best friend at 6, I don't know how long you were gone in Texas, but that's like more than half of your life at that time when you come back.
Yeah.
I think that must have been really hard at 6. I do remember, gosh, I'm going to still cry. No. I do remember when we were little, we had planned on doing this family trip to go surprise you and Natalie. So this was a long trip that took probably 3 days to get to Texas.
Oh, wait. You drove? You
Yeah,
drove?
we drove to Texas.
Wow.
And I think it's because we had the 5 of us and 2 other cousins with us.
Yeah.
And
That's
the
right.
anticipation of getting there was really exciting because this would have been the first time that I had seen you since you left.
Yeah.
We got to Texas and we surprised Natalie, and you weren't there.
Oh no.
I'm going to cry again. Oh my gosh. And Natalie said that we weren't going to be able to see you because you were at the camp.
I was at the ranch, you mean?
Yeah. So Natalie said, oh, you can't see her. And I think we just assumed that we could drive up to the ranch because, why couldn't we? It didn't make sense,
Right.
So we ended up hanging out with Natalie that whole week. And I just remember being really sad on that trip.
Thanks for trying. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
That is so crazy.
Okay. So you leave, you're at Karolyis. What is Karolyis like when you first get there?
I was in what was called the Hopes group, and I had a lot of great friends there. One of my friends was this wonderful, incredible gymnast, one of my childhood best friends, Mariana. She had a spicy personality, which was perfect for me because I was this hyper kid. My dad used to call her Alvin, like Alvin and the Chipmunks. And she was really funny. She would get me to do all kinds of stuff. I'm sure we egged each other on. It was perfect. So she and the other girls in this group were really amazing talents. A lot of them were very, very young. I remember one being like 6, even maybe.
Wow.
They were fantastic. Our coach was Rick Newman, who maybe people have heard about him already. He's been in books and all kinds of news, but he was the coach and he sort of set the tone. So he was the person who took the early talent and started intensively training them in that mindset that we've been talking about, and later would be part of what's called Group 1. So Group 1 is the bulk of elites at Karolyis back in the day. Eventually, you could be chosen from this Group 1 to the 6-pack, which is Bella and Marta's group.
Yeah. And I guess people don't really realize when you go to Karolyis, there is this process where you work with other coaches. You don't just jump into Bella's group.
Right.
And so, like you said, there's a 6-pack that Bella only takes 6 girls in his group at a time. There's no more, there's no less, there's only 6. And basically, he picks from the top of Rick's group. So the bulk of your gymnastics, your technique, your basics is groomed by Rick Newman. He's the one that does the bulk work of these elite gymnasts to excel, and Bella takes them at the height.
That's 100% right.
Right.
Okay. And let's not forget there's Marta. And we say Bella because Bella, let's be honest, he is the outward face of Karolyis Gymnastics.
Right.
But Marta, she was a sort of person that when she walked into the room, everything became silent. You could be
Mm.
laughing, you could be in the middle of a joke.
Mm.
Once she walked in, everything became instantaneously quiet and
Yeah.
serious for her. So
Mm.
really, if you think about it, she's the brains behind it
Right.
all.
Right. Yeah, I could see that. Especially for people who don't know, Bella Crowley was never a gymnast. Neither was Rick. Mara Crowley is the one that was the technician. She was the gymnast. Mm.
I don't know much about Rick's upbringing at all.
Mm-hmm.
I just know from the receiving end as a little girl, it
Mm.
just makes me wonder what happened with that person.
Mm.
You know, when
Yeah.
he was happy and excited, he would do this thing. He would say, "Groove and shake and far out fun, King dig it, will be all right out of sight." Yeah. And when he
Yeah.
said it, it was like high on life,
Right. Yeah.
right? I didn't just do well, I did really well. I was so excited. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
But man, when that man was mean, he was mean. And
Yeah.
he didn't have to say much. He could cut you down so quickly with just even ignoring you.
Mm.
So between that and he would scream as well. Lots
Yeah.
of imbecile, you useless imbecile. He could say it
Mm-hmm.
under his breath or he could scream it. And
Yeah.
I can only speak for me, but I'd walk away feeling like, man, I really fucked up. Like the 10-year-old version of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
True to the training, that mindset, you
Right.
learn to take that insult and think to yourself, I'm going to make it better. I'm going to prove it to
Right.
him.
Right.
You know, I'm going to get the positive response. I'm going to get the groove and shake and fry out fun
Right.
because that's like kind of what you live for eventually. That type of coaching makes you
Mm.
settle for breadcrumbs.
Mm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you get the breadcrumbs of positive, supportive
Right.
responses. That's what you live for, just teeny tiny bits.
Right. Well, it's
So
also because they starve you at this point because you're not getting any compliments. So whatever you
right.
get, you're like famished, and any crumb is any sort of substance for you to eat up quickly, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, I'm trying to replenish this body that's been starved for so long. And it could be the littlest things.
Yeah. In addition to that, I was so excited to be with all these incredible gymnasts and these coaches that
Mm-hmm.
could push you to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And then that coaching by fear and the insult to sort of make you stronger, for a
Mm-hmm.
while, it actually does work. You could take it in. I would say to myself, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do better this time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, now looking back, I can see that the shift of gymnastics that started happening for me then, where that mastery of a skill, because I liked it, I loved it, I wanted to do it, it was still there, it was still present, but it also started including somebody else's version.
Mm-hmm.
So I like
Wow.
to say that when I think of my relationship with gymnastics in general, gymnastics started as a cup of very pure mountain spring clear water. That was my love for gymnastics. Walking into Karolyis and starting to work with that type of coaching, that very controlling coaching by fear style, it was like starting to put ooze into it very
Like
slowly, like
contamination.
tiny, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Tiny drops at a time, sort of
Mm.
millidosing the water. And before you know it, it's just completely contaminated.
Mm. Right.
What started as doing for me became doing for somebody else.
Hmm.
And it was a slow crawl. But by the end of it, it resulted in what we'll talk about later, which is if I didn't do well, there was a horrible, horrible feeling of failure
Mm.
and disgust with myself because my coach is disgusted with me. But in the
Mm.
beginning, so let's go back to 1988, it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that. um, how is the difference from scats to curlies in the beginning?
Right. So back at Scats, I was still going to public school in Southern California, and my life isn't quite completely living for gymnastics. My parents, my sister, they worked it out with the school, which was called Holly Avenue. They was so supportive. I had two great teachers, Miss Ritter and Miss Mullen. They would give me homework. They would work with the schedule. So I would go to school early. I would leave school early. And I'd go with this family, this really lovely gymnast, a really lovely family. They had this huge van. We'd be doing homework in it, eating dinner in it. And we'd be going every day after school to Huntington Beach.
Wow.
6 days a week. And Huntington Beach, it's not close to Arcadia.
No, it's not close at all.
Yeah. For people who don't know Los Angeles, Arcadia and Huntington Beach are not close. How long would you say it is, Joy?
Back then, this is just guesstimating. I'm saying if there's no traffic from Arcadia to Huntington Beach, I would say at the least it would be 45 minutes. And that's being generous, if not more than that.
Yeah.
It's a huge commitment.
Right.
Are you overwhelmed, stuck, maybe disconnected in your relationship? Would you like to find more clarity and balance? Look no further than Laura Collins, LCSW, providing individual and couples counseling with warmth and empathy, a safe space to navigate life's challenges and connect you with your shine. Laura also specializes in working with current and former athletes and coaches, performance anxiety to post-competition transition. She understands the unique mental demands of the sports world. Curious to dive deep? Check out the links in our show notes for additional information about our practice and how we can support you in your journey.
So that's Scats. So now we go from that, where I'm trying to fit my life into gymnastics. And now we're at Karolyis in Texas, where my whole life is gymnastics. And it is the world I've been waiting for. I'd wake up in the morning and I get to start with gymnastics, going to morning practice multiple times a week.
Yeah.
In school, it's more like an afterthought, I did kick ass at math and science, though. I had a really great brain for that. And I loved my math teacher. I had a really, really super supportive math teacher in that public school.
All right. So quick question in terms of the culture of Karolyis, because when I moved away to Posars, I went to school with some of my teammates, which made gymnastics like literally in every aspect of my life. Did you have any moments that were just purely yours, or was every sort of aspect of your life, was there gymnastics sort of interwoven into these ordinary daily things?
I think the latter. I really do think the latter.
Yeah.
The first school that I went to, it was a public school. They were strict about how much time you could be absent. And of course, with gymnastics, you'd be gone to meets and such. There was a number of gymnasts that did go to that public school, and we all had issues with the requirements of attendance with that school. So eventually, a number of gymnasts either ended up being homeschooled or going to this private Christian school, which that's where I ended up going, which was then really, really tough financially. So here's something that people don't know. Karolyis was really, really, really expensive. And my parents, they were working middle class folks with a lot of debt. My parents, they were so smart and so loving, but they got caught up in that 1980s thing about credit cards and overspending. We had too big of a house, too big of a car. They always had financial issues, resulted in a lot of arguing in my home. My parents, they were fantastic individuals that probably shouldn't have gotten married. But they did, and they did the best that they could. They did not have a good relationship, and I'm sure the financial struggle didn't help it. And on top of that, having their two girls away, not only are we gone out of their lives, but now they have mortgages, they have a rent, they have this tuition for gymnastics. And whatever the cost was, I don't even understand to this day, I'm sure. But eventually with Karolyis, they required that you had 10 sponsors at least. And this I know for a fact because my mom, when I would come and visit California every so often, we'd have to go to lunch with somebody who was sponsoring me. And I may or may not have known them very well.
Yeah.
But I remember my mom always saying, don't forget, you have to say thank you to so-and-so because they're sponsoring you.
Oh, wow. They made you go find your own sponsors.
They did. It wasn't like a commercial business. It's not like when you see those cute baseball teams with the uniforms that says like sponsored by so-and-so's Pizza House. That wasn't it. So they really made a lot of money off of not just the girls and their families, but extended families, neighbors, hometowns, whole communities investing into the girls. And so therefore investing into the Karolyis ultimately as well.
Yeah. I mean, the amount that it costs to do gymnastics is astronomical because you're thinking of travel fee, competitions, leotards, grips, tape, pre-rep, medical needs, physical therapy. You're constantly in and out of the doctors.
Yeah.
Privates, right?
Yeah. Dance privates.
Yeah. Private lessons, choreography, event privates. It starts to rack up. So unless you're in a place where you can afford expendable costs, it puts a strain on most families.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think when we were gymnasts, I don't know how much sponsorship Olympic champions got in the 80s, especially with gymnastics, but now the sport has evolved and there's gymnasts that probably are making a living out of their wins.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. But it's not like gymnastics was going to pay all this money back.
Yeah.
So you have tons and tons of families going into financial debt because of this dream and the cost of sacrifice to live away from your families. And not everybody makes it. Not everybody achieves the dream. So you're seeing a lot of people going into debt at the cost of this decision.
Yeah. And to try to make ends meet, sometimes there would be people that would be boarding other gymnasts. You would know you were a boarding gymnast. There was a number of families that would take in the gymnasts, and we called them the boarding moms.
Yeah.
We ourselves ended up with 2 gymnasts. Both of them were fantastic. I have a great memory with one of them. She was a fantastic crafter. One Christmas, we spent creating all the tree decorations with her. She taught us how to make that, and it was really, really fun. We also had another gymnast who was a former Olympian, a bit quieter, big sister-esque. I was so lucky to have wonderful older gymnasts in my life at Karolyis. They were all protective. They had such wisdom. I felt really grateful. So the beginning of Karolyis was awesome. The level of gymnastics, the intensity, it was perfect for me. And especially because I was so hyper, it gave me something to focus on. Gymnastics is an all-around concentration. Where's your center of gravity? Where are you in relation to the floor or beam or bars or whatever? Like, you have to know where you are in space. You have to know where you are on the inside. There's a confidence that you have to build, because if you don't believe it yourself, forget it. You're screwed. You get hurt. You can't second guess yourself in that moment.
Yeah.
And I was healthy back then. No injuries. I could easily throw myself off anything and flip around and just enjoy it. It was great. In the gym, I had this intensity, but on the outside of the gym, I got to have a childhood. I was lucky to have Natalie, so lucky. My friend Mariana, she was lucky to have her mom. We lived in a complex with a bunch of other gymnasts as well. We would go do things, go get frozen yogurt, go line dancing, go ice skating at the Houston Galleria. We just got to be kids. And so it was nice to be both.
Yeah. So you're in this group where everyone is exceptional, right? Everybody is extraordinary. And that was sort of my experience when I went away to gym, where you're like, oh my God, everybody is good.
Yeah, exactly.
There's this mutual respect that you have for your teammates, and it's going to challenge you to be better in the group. And that's where you appreciate them, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to be a better gymnast because these are exceptional girls, and they're only going to push me to be my best.
Definitely. And it was creative. I will say this about the coaches, and this includes Rick as well. All the coaches, the beam coach, dance coaches, all of them, they really embraced creativity as well. I really enjoyed, for instance, at Scats, I don't remember her name, but she was, I think, the beam coach, and she used to turn the music on and just sort of let us do dance passes. And I absolutely adored that. Karolyis was the same way. So I would create these passes. One of my favorites that I created on beam was a front handspring and then like a split jump. And then it went straight into a back tuck that I landed on my knee.
Wow,
and then
badass.
I would sort of, thanks. And I would sort of spin around on my knee and then get onto my shoulder and then come out of it. And it was part of my optional routine. And
you choreographed that on, you choreographed that on your own.
Yeah. I was 11. I used to love doing that. And because it was
crazy.
mine, you could take extra special joy in it. I used it well into elitehood, clear down to my last meet, which was US Classics in Denver.
Wow, that's incredible. That's your own skill. So people who don't realize this in gymnastics, if nobody has done a skill that you've done, you get your name after it. So if you competed at an international competition, the skill could potentially have been called the segundo.
Oh, well, what can you do? I just remember when I created it, it was really exciting and I felt like it was mine.
Did you get any praise from your coaches when you made that up?
Oh, yeah. I had a wonderful beam coach. And I think even Marta said it looked really nice.
Oh, that's unusual.
I know. Yeah.
So how does that make you feel, especially when Marta says that looks great?
Oh, yeah. Right. Because when Marta says good and it's like a lowercase g, it's like an exuberant feeling. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it's just as exuberant when you're 16, because how often does Marta always say something is good?
Absolutely. It's true. That's true.
Okay. That's incredible. Really amazing. So I want to ask you a couple questions about your experience competing for Karolyis in your early years, because I can tell you what I thought of this, because obviously I saw the video footage and Natalie, videotaping and being really nervous and it being very shaky,
Yeah.
But I want to see your take on what kind of competitor you were at that time. And I'll tell you what I saw. So you're at Karolyis. It's your first competition season. What happens?
That's a really good question. I don't remember. I know I came into Karolyis as a class 3 optional back when they had classes. I don't really know what it was like. I do know I made state championship. And that's when we get to the story that we'll end with today.
Well, I can help you remember. Because I literally memorized those videos.
Wow.
And I'll just tell everyone Laura won like most competitions that I saw in those videos. You were winning, and not just winning second or third or one event. You go to Karolyis, and this actually happens probably when you're at Flares. When you walked into the competition, people already knew who you were because you were the kid that was dominating at your age group and your level. And this is really hard for you to say. And maybe it's part of it because you don't remember this. But you are the kid who is hard to beat. So for those who don't know this, Laura was already a champion at this time.
So it's hard to take in.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that.
Yeah. And I know you have a hard time admitting that, but you have awards that say that. And somebody who ever since she was a little girl who looked up to you and wanted to be just like you, I would always say my favorite gymnast is my cousin, Laura Segundo. So proud of you.
Thanks, Joy.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. So we get to the end of your class 3 season and we're getting for your state championship. What happens? Because this is a pivotal part of your career.
Yeah, you're right. This is pivotal. Let's see, how do I say this? I will definitely share on social media some of my diary entries. I want to give 10, 11, 12-year-old Laura a chance to share her voice. She really depicts the personality of her coaches at the time. And in one of them, she draws a picture of Rick yelling in one ear and smiling, trying not to let it get to her. And I read that diary now, and it's hard to imagine that I was her in some ways. In many ways, I'm still processing and trying to understand right now. I mean, coaches can get frustrated. I absolutely understand that. There is a fine line, though, between frustration and then the quote unquote harsh or abusive style, that fear controlling style. That's the stuff that imprints really negatively on any kid. And that line was, as a very young Karolyis gymnast, crossed. It was just very hazy over time until I got older. Like I can handle people yelling at me. I don't like it when people ignore me because I'd rather be yelled at. At least I know where I stand with people.
Right.
Anyway, all this in preparation for sharing the story, which is we were getting ready for class 3 optional state championships. And I was super excited at the time. It was my first big meet, having just moved to Texas. Give me a second.
Yeah. It's okay.
So I'm 46 this year, and I can look at my left elbow. I have arthritis in it. It still hurts. It doesn't turn all the way. And I know where that came from. It started 3 days before the class 3 optional state championship. This is 1988. So I'm 10, almost 11. It was morning practice. I don't know what happened with Rick, but he woke up on the wrong side of the bed. We were on bars. It was 6:30 in the morning. And he says to me, "You're going to do 10 routines in a row to my liking. And if it's not in a row, you're going to start over again." And in the beginning, I'm like, whatever, that's just how he always is. So I start doing the routines and he starts counting 1, 2. I get to maybe 5 bar routines or so. And he's like, start over. And I end up doing that all morning practice. By the end of morning practice, he says, when you come back, you're going to start over back on bars, 10 routines to my liking. Okay. So I go to school and now I'm starting to feel nervous. I'm really hoping that maybe when I get back to practice in the afternoon, he's going to be in a better mood because it's 3 days before state championship. I know I had a dance private. I remember telling the dance coach at the time, I have to go back on bars. Afternoon session starts. And now I'm pretty nervous. I'm really hoping he forgot, but he didn't. Segundo, get back on bars. 1, 2, 3, start again. 1, 2, start again. Over and over and over. Just bars this whole time. And at some point, my team moved on to beam or whatever next event was, and I'm still on bars. And then our session ends. So remember, I'm in the Hopes group. I'm not in group 1 yet. Hopes group, they go to dance class. And group 1, they're coming on to bars. In that transition, I don't see Rick, so I kind of see if I can sneak my way into dance class. I'm in dance class. I think I'm okay. Nobody has said anything. And then I hear it. The dance studio was in the loft of gym 2, and the bars are clear across on the other side of gym 2. From the bars, Rick screams out, Segundo, get back down here and finish your bar routines. And at that point, I looked at Mariana, and now I'm scared. That's nice and shaming as he liked to be. I felt like, at least. I get back to bars. Now I'm with group 1. These girls eventually become like my big sisters, but at the time I didn't know them. I just feel like this tiny, tiny fish in a pond with these girls who are these amazing gymnasts. Really, really great. But I'm also feeling intimidated. And I feel ashamed because my team is in dance and I'm with this other team because I'm in trouble.
Right.
So I'm doing these bar routines. 1, 2, 3. I'm starting to get so tired. At some point, I think my arms felt like jelly. It was super dark outside. It was I don't even know how many bar routines. 10,000? At some point, I'm telling myself, just keep it together. But this particular routine, I'm tired. And on my dismount, I clipped my toes on the high bar and it stopped the rotation. I start falling. I don't want to hit my face on the ground, so I put my arms down. I don't want my arms to break, so I keep them bent. And then I hit the ground and I knew something happened because I saw stars. I just immediately felt out of my body. And I got up slowly and I turned and I look at Rick. I can still close my eyes and still see his face. You can tell he went from being pissed at me to now he looks something. I'm not going to give him his emotion, but he wasn't pissed at me anymore. He says to me, 1 more and go home. So I go and chalk up. I wobble and I'm not feeling right. I'm getting lightheaded. I feel like my limbs aren't attached to me anymore. Something is really, really off. So I actually go ahead and walk up to the bar. I start the next routine. I do a kip. And after the kip, I'm supposed to cast into a handstand. When I get to the top of that kip, my arms are straight, but my left arm is bending backwards. It was horrifying. And I hop off the bar and I'm now freaking out on the inside. I put my arm down on the floor and it's bending backwards. I just keep saying, something is wrong. Something is really wrong. What do I do? Something is wrong. And I can't even imagine what the girls around me must have thought too, because it was horrifying to look at. And Rick just goes, go home. In the locker room, Bella comes to me. He's looking at my arm and he's just telling me, it's going to be okay, Laura. Everything's going to be fine. It's probably just strained or sprained or something. Just put ice on it. You'll be fine. And then I walk out.
Nobody talks to Natalie. Nobody calls your parents.
I mean, not that I know of, not to my knowledge. So, mind you, during this time, every so often I'm getting lightheaded and it's just getting worse and worse. My sister ends up taking me to the emergency room. She was working as a front desk person at a physical therapy clinic that was connected to 3 really great doctors, Dr. Kant, Stewart, and Fitzgerald. Dr. Kant shows up to the emergency room, and thank goodness. I feel like
my ancestors were watching me at that time. Natalie tells Dr. Kant what happened. He takes a look at it and he goes, "It's busted." And then I start crying. Now I'm like, I'm going to miss my meet. What are you talking? I can't miss the meet. I've been working so hard. What are you talking about? I absolutely lost it. They're trying to keep me calm. And I keep going in and out, this dizziness, this lightheadedness. They do x-rays. And then Dr. Kant says, well, no wonder she keeps going in and out because the bone is pressing against her artery. We need to run her to emergency surgery because she could have blood death. It's pressing against the artery. It's compromising the entire circulatory system. And so now I'm being rushed because I'm going in and out. And I see Natalie on my right as the bed is going down the hallway. I just feel so bad for her. She's so little too. She keeps saying like, Laura, I'm here. Are you okay? Laura, I'm here. I remember telling her, I'm okay, Natalie. I mean, she was a baby, taking care of a baby.
Yeah.
It was really scary. So I go through surgery. I wake up. I have this enormous cast on. They said that they tried to push the bone back in place and stick a pin in it. Didn't work out. So they had to open it and actually manually put it down, but then push a pin into it. I was inpatient for a few days for them to observe and make sure that I was going to be okay. So in my place, the alternate for state championship was Mariana. And so that's something that we'd share together. Just have to say that when he called my name and I looked at her and her face was, you know, those moments that you have with your teammates, those looks.
Yeah.
I could see in her eyes. She was just like, I'm so sorry, girl. I'm with you, sort of thing.
Yeah.
This was a moment that changed my personality forever, for sure. Championships came and went. I went through physical therapy. I never got back my full mobility of my left arm. And I used to be one of those girls that had hyperextended elbows. If you extend your arm straight out with the palm down and you turn your thumb to the outside, I used to be able to turn it all the way over.
Wow.
I could never do that again.
Wow. And gymnasts are constantly on their hands. And so that's a huge deficit to not be able to have that mobility and that rotation, especially when you're in a handstand, because you're constantly pirouetting and constantly turning.
Yeah. I could never turn on that side anymore on a pirouette. You know, I always did on the right side, which was fine. It was my dominant hand anyway. But sometimes I think about some of the skills that were required, maybe in compulsory routines or whatnot. And I used to think something was wrong with me, but realizing now that not having full mobility probably contributed to the challenge of being able to complete skills in a way that I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I'm thinking of it like somebody who coached gymnastics. Air awareness, timing, it's milliseconds when you're in the air and you're doing something that fast. You're twisting and you're letting go of, especially on the bars, when you're doing a release move, letting go of the bar, the right timing, the right tap swing with the right handstand and the right momentum has a factor on how you land perfectly to grab that bar.
Yeah.
And so those things shift your ability when you have to relearn how to manipulate your body to be able to work with whatever limitations you have. That's incredibly hard. That's really challenging.
Yeah. It didn't even dawn on me to look at my coach and say this happened because I got overworked that day. He never said sorry.
Yeah. Even with that, I'm like thinking of it as a 43-year-old, right? Somebody who works with children and being in charge of their well-being and they're under my care.
Yeah.
It is my responsibility.
Right.
Nobody else's. My responsibility. If I am in charge, if I am the adult in charge to make sure that they are safe.
Yeah.
And so when I think of an injury like that, I can't imagine being with those kids that I'm in charge of and not notifying their parents or their guardians or talking to them. Like nobody talked to Natalie. Nobody explained what happened. It fell on a little girl to take care of herself in that moment.
Yeah.
Well, two little girls, if you think about it. It fell on a 9-year-old girl and a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Totally.
Okay. I mean, we can go and see who's responsible here, but ultimately, what Rick should have done was not make you do 10 routines in a row at the end of the day.
Right.
You know, like,
yeah,
just be a fucking human being,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Ugh. I'm so sorry that happened to you, Laura.
Oh, no sorries. No, let's not do
Okay.
sorry. We're not saying sorry for, you don't have to say sorry for him. No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. Thank you for hearing my story and being with me.
Yeah.
Because even as I recount it, I'm filled with shame and a feeling of failure, you know? But there's another part of me that knows that she did nothing wrong. That little girl did nothing wrong. She was strong. She was brave. And she put up with abusive coaching in that moment. And I hold my 10-year-old self now and give her the biggest hug. Because she was fucking fierce. And my sister, Natalie, was fucking incredible.
Yeah. Absolutely. You are incredibly brave, and I'm really proud of you.
Thanks, Joya. And thank you all for listening today and being with me.
Yeah. We know that this was probably difficult for you guys to listen to, but this is part of our story, and we're trying to create a space where these stories are amplified and gives a complete picture of what happened in our experience as 1980 and 1990s gymnasts. We believe these stories are important to hear, as difficult as they are. So, with that, I love you.
I love you more.
We love you most.
Hi.
Up next on Hahnacity, the podcast. At a mere 19 years old, big sister Natalie Grace Segundo becomes parent, protector, and most valuable player for her little sister Laura.
I looked at him. I said, she is 9 years old. She needs calcium. You do what you have to do at the gym, and I'll do what I have to do at the house.
Listen to her incredible story, Episode 5, MVP, on Amazon and Spotify.
Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, please reach out to us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and our website, hahnacity.com.
Share and follow us on Amazon and Spotify. Help us out and leave a 5-star review. Thanks!